Shawn had said he would come over to my house and see me and we would talk about it. And I lived in Biddeford at the time, and I'll never forget him walking up the stairs. It's like the moment, and almost like freeze frames in many ways, because he had on Levi jeans, and he never wore Levi jeans. He always wore blue Carhartts. So it instantly to me was like, oh my gosh, this is so weird. Or something that, like, to me, it was almost like he was dressy, Levi jeans, in his Moody's sweatshirt, because we all had our Moody's, sweatshirts and clothing. And so we came in, we sat down, and I had a couch, like very similar to this, a little love seat here, and then another couch, a futon over here. And I was sitting on this couch feeding Aiden, who was 6 weeks old, and we started talking, and he said, I'm not firing you, but I don't have a place for you to come back to work. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, I don't have a job for you right now. He said, as a single mom, you don't really have a place in my company anymore. And again, I was like, what do you mean? And he said, he'd had a lot of aspirations for me and a lot of great plans or ideas, but my priorities had changed now that I had had Aiden. And he told me he knew I'd given 210% of myself to the company and to him, and that he appreciated that. But again, that the position I held there, he no longer had available for me because I wasn't going to be able to do it as a single mom. He referenced like daycare hours, because the hours were like 7 to 5. And that daycares weren't even open at that time. And quite honestly, I didn't even really know what time daycares. I hadn't really checked into it yet. I just knew that daycares are plentiful, and I would figure that piece out. So I was literally flabbergasted, heartbroken. I begged him. I was like, find something for me, like out in the Gorham office. Can you put me in like bookkeeping? Like when I said to him, I'm like, I don't know what to do now. Like, what do I do? I'm like, I'm not marketable right now. Like I can't go get daycare because now I don't have a job to get daycare. So how do I go for interviews? People that were friends with me absolutely know, that worked there, that it was true, because everybody was pretty much as shocked as I was. Like, are you kidding? And then like that one of his, he claims, nobody's ever fired unless they are fired for job performance issues. Well, I have my whole personnel file. Obviously, in a lawsuit, it's one of the things that's requested in such lawsuits. I don't have one complaint from management. I actually got a $5,000 raise that year. So if my performance were down, I'm not sure I would have gotten a raise. And a lot of people, like with my New York Times article, have said, oh, it's a political smear. I'm Republican. It's so not a political smear. I love Donald Trump. Actually, in my last house, I have a hat that hangs on the wall. Make America Great Again, his red hat. I voted LePage. Like this, I didn't honestly know much about any other candidate because honestly, I'm not overly political. But when I vote, I'm Republican. I've had more arguments standing behind Trump. People that I work will even be like, what? And I'm like, no, I'm behind Trump all the way. Like, I love Trump, got this. And I still, like I said, my son, my son's a huge Trump. Like, it has nothing to do with politics for me. It has to do with, this was my story. This was my life. And when your campaign is based on this pillar of you are homeless, no, not homeless. When your mom was a single mom, you had to get out and you had to work. If you can work, you need to work. Well, I was able to work. You fired me for being a single mom. I was able to work. I then went on the state. Like and it's humbling to stand in a grocery line with WIC pieces of paper. And I even said that to him. I was like, you go stand in line. You stand in line with these pieces of paper and have to separate out your food or go on the state for insurance or, and I ended up having to move out of my apartment that I lived in because I was just, when he left my apartment that day, I'm holding this baby and I'm like looking at him going, oh my God. But it was just like that started this downhill spiral because you're living this life, you have this life, and then all of a sudden you were making really good money and you go to making $10 an hour. So I ended up I ended up getting a place of my own for a while because, it's really hard to live with other people when you have a baby. I was unable to afford it. So I ended up moving in with friends again. My car ended up getting repossessed, and this was over a course of like 2 years. And I just finally at that point, I went to my brother again, who I called the day it happened. And I was like, the day that Shawn came, and I said, "You're not going to believe this, but I just got fired for being a single mom." He's like, "What are you talking about? It's illegal." I said, "Well, I understand that, but that's what just happened." And I mean, I was hysterical. So I packed up and went to my brother's. And so I ended up losing my car, and I almost just waved this white "I surrender" flag. Like I said to my brother, well, I need to do something to get our lives going back on track. So I actually moved back home to Machias with my family, and I went back to school and got my teaching certification. So I actually can be certified regular ed and special ed. And as of right now, I'm a special ed teacher, behavior special ed. I love it, and I love my kiddos, but it doesn't change where I came from. And I've had people say, "Well, why did you speak out now?" I spoke out 13 years ago, and he made reference to, well, if that was, it was made reference to that if that was the case, it was for settling for $20,000, it would have taken on a life of its own if it were really a discrimination case. Well, as I had said in the New York Times, and it ended up settling under something different. And I know we've talked, he's said with the non-disclosure, again, people came to me. I didn't reach out and say, "Here's this happened." I mean, everything that people have come to me with, they went and got, and it's public knowledge. It's public knowledge. Even after I spoke out, then I watched the new ad, and you can say that's great. You can say that you pay women an above average rate or those things, but again, it goes back to, you came to my house, you let me go for being a single mom. Now you're claiming you pay these women well, and that's great. I was paid well. I enjoyed working there. I was asked, would you still be there if this hadn't happened? I don't know what would happen over 13 years, but I'd like to think so. I was able to work. I was unable once he fired me. I had no intentions of going on the state. I went on the state. When you come from where I come from, it's really humbling because you grow up around poverty, and it's just not what I wanted, obviously. But I also think it builds character, and people have judged, and I've heard some of the rebuttals, and that's wonderful. I'm so glad people are being treated well. That's not my story. So to say that that's your story, that's great. I'm not going to say you're lying because I believe you. But to say I am, nobody was in my house that day with a 6-week-old when I watched this person who I'd worked for 2 years come up the stairs and then sit in my apartment, and tell me I no longer had a place to go back to. You didn't live that story. And if anybody would think I would ever make that up, they're crazy, because I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, because I don't. Because it's really hard to begin again. And then you've already, single mom and a new mom. It was already so overwhelming anyway. So to add that to it is mind-blowing to me. And would I have made it work? Yes. I am a super strong person. Would it have been easy? Probably not, because we did have long hours. We did. But you did it and you loved it, because hours there didn't feel long. But for my kid, I would have made anything work. So my priorities had changed. So you get to tell me now that, how was I better off by having no income? By having to move out of my house, by having to go on state aid. How is somebody better off? People just deserve to know that there's more to that. There's more to, my mom was single, or the pillars of if you can work. those are two very big parts of your campaign, but two very big things. You put somebody in the position of being an unemployed single mother and the inability to return to work for having a baby. Yeah. It's supposed to be the greatest time of your life. Or when your son has heard you tell the story and says, you lost your job because of me. You know, that's hard. And it's, you know, others may say, well, why would you know the story? Because our life our life took a very big change. We ended up moving a lot. We ended up moving back to Machias, you know. It was hard. And of course he's going to know that because that's my story. That shaped the last 13 years of my life. And do I love where I am? Absolutely. I'm not saying that at all. I love where I am. I love my job. But it wasn't a choice. So I kind of got here by happenstance, and that's okay. You know, I've been in the trenches and I've dug my way out, and that's okay too. I think it builds character, but I also think that people don't deserve to have choices taken away from them.